missing over a single campaign. Looking at some of the rhythm that we had earlier today, we'll maybe come on to that in a little bit, but Rueda and Kelso both look fairly well placed.
Forosato, who we are looking at on screen, who leads this queue of riders. Forosato was 8th earlier on this morning, but the second differences the lap times in the process. Forosato was 6th yesterday afternoon. Mentioned at the start of the session, it was a strong session yesterday for the new team's champions, Red Bull, KTM, IO. Rueda and Carpe were 1 and 2. Timely return to Volta Carpe, who took his first podium since Mugello last weekend in Phillip Island, which yes, will move him up as high as 4th in the World Championship in the time that remains. Of course, David Munoz not taking any further part in the remainder of this season. Just 6 points behind Joel Kelso in 5th, who in turn is only 18 points behind Munoz, who won't be adding 97 points as already scored.
David Munoz will be out for the rest of the season, unfortunately. I mentioned this in Q1, but had to go through surgery, second surgery on the leg that he broke in Indonesia. Found that there was some rotation in the leg after the first.
30 degrees worth?
30 degrees was one of the things that I read. It sounds very, very unpleasant, but thankfully they spotted that early and managed to correct it. But it does look as though he will be facing a rather long winter of rotation and recovery, but no doubt that David Munoz will be back for the start of next season. I said this in Australia, there'll be no question that he'll be starting 2026, one of the pre-race or pre-season favourites. Take the championship from what we saw this season. So Rueda into the slipstream of Forosato. This is a decent positioning, you would say, from the number 99. Also from the 36 of Angel Piqueras. We do know that Forosato likes this place. It was only David Alonso that was able to deny him his first ever victory in the Moto3 category here 1 year ago.
The second place is that Forosato has had in his Moto3 career. So thank you for mentioning that. Yellow flags have come out somewhere in the... It's a final corner. You can see the marshals trudging into the gravel track, although they've now turned around and ran away again. So it would appear whichever rider did go through the gravel has been able to get himself back up and running. But either Uriarte or Vitelli, they're the two who get to come across the line. Rueda straight down to a 2:10.076. That is the fastest lap of the weekend so far, and it's actually only half a second away from the all-time lap record that Adrian Fernandez set on his way to pole a year ago.
So amazing pace from Rueda early on. Not benefiting from that tool that Forosato is giving him just up ahead. He's placed himself very, very well. And hats off to Joel Kelso as well. Oh, and that's a crash for Angel Piqueras. Found at turn 4 as well. So we saw Cormac Buchanan fall and fall of turn 4 earlier on in Q1. Thankfully, Piqueras looked completely unharmed. But some consternation down in the MSI box. Has already took a lap, which is picked up the provisional front row. And here is what happened as he makes the run down into turn 4.
The common hot spots here, and the front went quite early there, didn't it? Didn't meet the apex before he went down. You can see how desperate he was there to keep the bike running, get it back as soon as possible. It was one of the quickest remounts from the crash you will ever see from Piqueras, who sure will bring that bike up pit lane. Didn't appear, certainly from the brief shot we saw of it, if there was too much damage done. Piqueras at least has put a 2:10.4 on the board. Rueda, Carpe, Piqueras at the moment, you're 1, 2, 3. Peroni, of course, we saw in Q1 a moment ago, had anything approaching a 2:10.5 on the board. Well, Peroni certainly has upped his game in qualifying 2. He heads row 2 at the moment.
Yeah, excellent stuff from Peroni. And it looks as though Rueda, looking over his shoulder, has visibly caught Forosato this time around. I think that was Guido Pini coming out of turn 14 on the grass, getting it all out of shape. And Italian looking a little bit wild. It's a standard operating procedure, you would have to say, throughout the course of 2025. Rueda was looking over his shoulder. He has abandoned this lap, and that kind of shows you just how strong he is. Even when he's got 3 red sectors, he feels it appropriate to dart into pit lane.
Mansa takes 4th place. He's 22, just coming towards your picture. He had a crash in free practice 2 this morning. A personal battle with Cormac Buchanan to see who can crash most, it feels like, in 2025. But he's certainly fast in between all of the get-offs. 2:10.5.05 for our Mansa. Led by Honda on pole position last year. Oh, we lost a couple of Malaysian Grand Prix. Jalamatsia The year prior to that, Uriarte, was it him that we saw through the gravel trap in the final corner, because he came straight up pit lane after this, and he was more than just the gravel trap, he was off the side of his bike. Quite like the Keras, though, it appears as if there was minimal damage done.
Didn't actually make it into the gravel trap, and thankfully was well placed to come straight back down into pit lane, so no real damage to the bike it seems. We haven't also not seen a lap time set from Joel Kelso's teammate, the level up rider of Matteo Bertelli. What's going on, Elliot?
Yeah, we haven't. Just spoke to the team down there, and they said Bertelli came back into the pits after his outlap and said there was some sort of issue with the clutch. They've not changed too much on the bike, to be honest. Been down here watching them, so hopefully they've got that fixed and Bertelli can go out and set a lap time. But yeah, just some sort of issue with the clutch going on there for the Italian.
Thanks very much. Issue. Let's hope that Matteo Bertelli can have that fixed before getting back out for this stretch off the session.
I think it was even for the final, by the way. Matteo Bertelli was qualified second row of the grid via qualifying one, put fifth on the grid, and then brought it home in a top 10. He's now scored points in each of 3 races he's competed in back since injury. There he is, coming to the picture now on the 18th. So hopefully whatever gremlins were floating around in that KTM have been fixed, given what he's been through midway through this season. Keras also really enjoying the action. You have to doff your cap to Bertelli for the way he's approached this return from what was a seriously significant injury.
A threatening injury he sustained after the Grand Prix of the Americas all the way back in April. And the team are really pushing for him to come back in this final part of the season to prove his fitness going into 2026. And spoke to him just before the summer break. He was not really so sure about whether he could come back this year. Such was the state of his body and recovering. But even now, as Will said, 3-point scoring results on the points, and he's gradually been improving week by week. 12th, 11th and 10th for his last 3 results. So yeah, hats off to Matteo Bertelli. Really impressive from him. Been a decent first run for Danish, the home hero. 13 ahead of Eddie O'Shea, who's having one of his better weekends of the season. Eddie straight through into Q2, courtesy of a really good time yesterday afternoon. 13th fastest he was in practice.
Interesting here to see Keyless up behind Rueda. That's Keyless who now just 3 points behind, hanging on to Keras for second in the World Championship, but hasn't necessarily gelled immediately with this Sepang International Circuit so far. He's only in qualifying 2 automatically because of Jacob Wilson's withdrawal from the event, or declaring of unfit from the weekend at the end of play on Friday, because Wilson had got himself automatically through to qualifying 2 before he crashed and broke his hand. Had Wilson continued in the weekend, we would have seen Keyless a moment ago in qualifying 1. Not saying, of course, that he wouldn't have advanced through, but Keyless 16th at the moment in this session, still trying to understand the formula to fast lap times around Sepang.
As you said, struggling to gel somewhat. The previous 3 tracks that have been to in this flyaway run of the season, Keyless has been active at getting up to speed at all of them. Hasn't finished lower than 5th on the last 3 appearances. Seriously impressive when he's been showing up and rocking up at each of those circuits for the first time, with Tegi, Mandalika and Phillip Island. But it's just not quite come together at the same rate this weekend, which is fairly understandable. We do have to keep reminding ourselves that he is still a rookie in the class. And Antonio Rueda wasn't really playing ball when he was going to toe. A rider that could well beat his rival in tomorrow's race. A faster time in qualifying. Let's see what some of these riders can do. We have plenty of red crash helmets popping up on our timing screens for Bertelli, Ryan Uriarte, Joel Kelso, Martin Throni, Guido Pini and Jose Antonio Rueda all through the first sector.
Keras at the back of the queue. Keras just 6 thousandths off in the first sector. He's certainly pushing, isn't he, on that MSI KTM. Kind of needs to turn defence into attack now if he's to finish second in the World Championship, with Keyless now just 3 points behind him. Consider how many Grand Prix Keyless has missed this season, 4 of them in total. Keras perhaps fighting a losing battle to hold on to that second place overall, as Keyless now really does squeeze Carpe out to the edge of the track. The rookies leaving each other absolutely no space there, as Keyless wants to get himself onto the rear tyre of Rueda.
Love lost in that little battle there. The rookies going toe-to-toe down into turn 9. Keyless came out better on that particular occasion. It's from Rueda. He is on course to better his lap time. Could be the first Moto3 rider, and he has a big moment there coming through turn number 12 and 13. Goodness me, Jose Antonio Rueda was very, very lucky to keep it up right there.
That's a crash. That's a crash for Kelso. Back in the picture, Vitelli, excuse me, on the MTA bike, so having got back out of early problems, he's now crashed out. So there'll be no time set for Matteo Vitelli. Uriarte might be in the best position here because he's not had to check up, and he's now in the slipstream of Quiles, who'll be towing him down this back straight. He's the second bike in your picture. Look at the variety of lines they take through the up-camber final corner turn 15. Sacrificed a bit on entry there, did Uriarte, but certainly got the exit right, and he's pulled clear of Kelso. So the 28th bike of Quiles leads us across the line. He goes into, what, 10th place, 6th place, in fact, for Quiles. Front rows, though, for Uriarte and Pini. Peter Ertl, who we spoke to 12 months ago, will be loving what he's seeing right now.
And Uriarte, in just his second Grand Prix appearance, on course to qualify on the front row of the grid. They can barely believe it down there in the Intact GP box. Incredible stuff of the pair of their riders, with Guido Pini second, Brian Uriarte third. Also, really exceptional performance from Valentin Peroni. Coming through Q1, has got himself up into fifth in this session.
Vitelli did remount. He's just come across the line, so he's got one more shot at this, potentially moving himself up the grid from 18. Best first sectors for Peroni, for Pini, and for Brian Uriarte. We're looking at the 51 now. That's a not, but you're going to see an awful lot in the future of Grand Prix racing.
Seeing those two riders in Jim next year, you feel Quiles and Brian Uriarte, two of the more exciting talents coming through Spanish system in recent years. Looks as though he's not finished yet. He's going to retake the delay. Says he on track almost. This is a bit of a dress rehearsal for tomorrow's race. You can see it, Kelso getting very frustrated with the riders up ahead.
They're all slowing each other down, aren't they? Because Uriarte was slow through turn 6, and that backed the field up. So Kelso now in the 66 is second in the queue, but the job might already be done for Kelso, who's currently down in 11th place. They've all lost time through the second sector, so Uriarte won't be improving on third. Quiles won't be improving on 6th. On a whole heap of personal best sector times, it has to be said, on our timing screens at the moment, that are going to change matters. Peroni might be one of the few riders who could improve his lot. He has a good third sector, so much traffic for him to try and pick his way through, but he's lost time through the third sector. Something of an anticlimactic finish, it would appear, to this qualifying session, but it is pole number 6 who shot for Jose Antonio Rueda.
Really not surprising at all. And I think the pilot will be a little bit miffed with those antics there in the final lap. Will be Joel Kelso. It's 11th at best for the young Australian in this session. I said a bit of a messy end here. It looks as though on the timing screen, Yamanaka could jump up the order. Eddie O'Shea potentially as well as Rouchet Moodley, but they will not be troubling first 2 or 3 rows of the grid, I feel.
Slightly too early, because we did have a couple of riders elsewhere on the racetrack who've got over for one more lap on Hondas. Almanza and Forasato, who are both up at the first sector, so we'll just keep an eye on their progress. Remember, it was a Leopard Honda that was on pole here last year. Danish, personal best on his final run, 14th on the grid for him, middle of row 5. That is certainly not a disgrace for his Grand Prix debut. Look at this though from Almanza in the second sector, perhaps just about far enough behind Forasato to pick up some faint slipstream, and certainly to get some sort of reference from Forasato. Forasato, well, he hasn't had a pole position since the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix of last year. Of course, David Almanza, one of our 12 different pole sitters already so far this season.
One pole position for Almanza in Barcelona just a couple of months ago, and now looking to add to that tally. It was Jose Antonio Rueda that took advantage of Forasato's slipstream, the current pole position lap. And look at this from Forasato. He's absolutely nailed that third sector here. There could be a bit of late heartache here for Guido Pini and Brian Uriarte, with these two Honda riders set to push them off the front row.
For all the nonsense that was going on elsewhere around the racetrack, with essentially the other 16 riders in this qualifying session, might be a bit of poetic justice here. If Forasato and Almanza are about to snatch places on the front row of the grid, this could really punish the Intact team. With a second and third double front row start at the moment, both riders could be bumped off the front row of the grid here. Is this a straight shootout then between Forasato and Almanza to deny the world champion pole position? Forasato across the line at 2:09.940. Almanza beats it though by a 1/10 of a second, and it is in the end a second pole position for Almanza. The Intact duo bumped off the front row by the rider that will be riding for them next season. David Almanza snatches pole for Leopard Honda in Malaysia.
Yeah, Honda 1-2 on the grid as well. Tao Forasato denied right at the end by the rider who was benefiting from his slipstream on that final lap. You can see him hitting the tank coming round turns 1 and 2 in frustration. But a brilliant late effort that from Furusato nonetheless to place himself in the middle of the front row for tomorrow is David Almanza, who is still, even at this advanced stage of the season, chasing his first Grand Prix podium, who has taken his second pole position of his career. He left it absolutely lit, but what a brilliant lap time that was. And just shows you that get out there, run your own lines, and don't be hanging around looking for the toe. Moto3 qualifying sessions can actually pay off for you from time to time. So brilliant stuff there from Almanza and Furusato. 1-2 for Honda in Moto3 qualifying.
Of course, for the Leopard Honda team, more time success for that. Fernandez took pole position in 2024. His all-time lap record, not quite beaten in the end in that session. It's 2023. We saw Jama Masia taking as well. This was the near escape for Rueda. Was he just actually signalling with his right foot to Quiles to go on through? I'm not going to be towing you around, but Telly came into action with the bike already on its side, with the rider split from it. Telly did go back out, did get one more lap in, but didn't improve on 18th place. Rueda does still start from the front row of the grid, and front row of the season. And he won't be thanking me for falling pole position, not be prematurely. David Almanza and Tayo Furusato a little bit extra on those final laps. A quarter of a second, in fact, over Rueda in third. And Angel Piqueras, who was on the front row of the grid, did not improve in the end on his final run. This will start on the third row, side by side with the rider who he's battling with for second in the World Championship. Quiles and Piqueras, 8th and 9th.
Be an interesting fight. Keep an eye on tomorrow. So Marco Carpe will be looking for some retribution on Max Quiles after that little kiss that he received on at turn number 9. They were in that session, but a decent run that from Carpe, who has been back to his best in the last couple of race weeks. He was saying after his Phillip Island podium just how difficult it was to kind of go through at mid-season lull when he got so used to running up at the front and scoring podium finishes, even being in the championship fight midway through the season. And a real shock for him to deal with fighting for 9th and 10th places. See that the Intact GP boys, I think, it actually made their way up to Parc Ferme in anticipation of being on the front row of the grid, but those late lap times have necessitated the push back onto their garage.
And Furusato denying Intact a double front row. Mention it's the rider who's heading across to Intact for next season. David Almanza, who's largely responsible for that.
Very briefly, Lewis, looking at some of the longer runs that we saw in FP2 this morning, the riders very, very fast at the end of their longer runs. Jose Antonio Rueda on lap 14 with a 2-minute 10.7. Tayo Furusato on lap 13 of his long run did a 2-minute 10.8. Angel Piqueras on lap 13 of his longer run did a 2-minute 11.0. So I think those three riders could, well, they certainly have the rhythm sorted out. They'd be riders in the mix for the podium tomorrow. Certainly Rueda, and I have to say Furusato as well, looking really, really good so far this weekend. Piqueras will have a bit more work to do coming through from the third row.
It's a sweet day in some respects for Leopard. Adrian Fernandez, last year's pole sitter, down in 12th. Finish 14 for him. Number 13, he'll make his Grand Prix debut tomorrow from that 5th row of the grid, just ahead of the British pair, Scott Ogden and Eddie O'Shea, who make that his best dry qualifying in Moto3.
I know as well, he did get pushed off the front row right at the end, but Ryan Uriarte, 5th position in just his second ever Grand Prix appearance at World Championship level. Here is the 61 leading this group, and the shenanigans going on here, and yet this is currently under investigation, because you could maybe make an argument that Quiles and Uriarte on the racing line here, right at the end of Q2, are not riding at the absolute limits of their capabilities. And we know that Race Direction have been trying to cut this kind of thing out through this year. We've seen some penalties all the way of Jose Antonio Rueda in particular. Silverstone, he was handed a back grid start for similar antics to that, so maybe who's bigging them up, Uriarte and Quiles, they could be in for a bit of trouble from the FIM stewards.
Well, he's going to get to his second Grand Prix. At least this could be trying Uriarte's first defence. So perhaps it won't be quite as strong a penalty. Get that joker out of the way in your brief, I don't really call it a rookie season, can we? It's his pre-rookie season really in Moto3. Uriarte, who still does have a Junior World Championship to win, but a second pole position in Moto3 this season. Remember, he led this Grand Prix last season. David Almanza on pole in Malaysia, speaking to Al.
Second pole position in Moto3. Talk us about that last lap leave it right to the end, and you must be confident now heading into the race.
Yes, we are very happy with my second pole position. Thank you to the team because have a very good work. And yes, that trip for me, I like a lot because the last year I do more or less well. Yes, we are very happy. We are ready for tomorrow.
Great job, congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, David Almanza will be gunning for a maiden podium finish in the Moto3 category from pole position, second of his career. Surely he's going to break that duck before the end of this season. He's got more opportunities. Up in a fantastic position here at Sepang. There has been success for the Leopard Honda squad here in years gone by. Palmier won the 2017 Moto3 race, and Alaporta won it 2 years later for bikes in light blue. Almanza had his name at this company here on Sunday, trying to gauge the expression on Tao Furusato's face. He was obviously a little frustrated when he found out he just missed out in pole position, but finally he's come back in to celebrate on the Team Asia squad. It looks as though he's a lot happier with his day's work. Still not good enough for pole position, but Almanza making it Honda rider on pole position again here in Moto3.
On the 1-2, David Almanza from Tao Furusato, both gunning for their first Moto3 victory. Tomorrow, world champion Rueda third, ahead of the intact duo Guido Pini and Brian Uriarte. Alvaro Carpe sixth, ahead of Valentin Peroni, Max Kilos, Nat Capiqueras. Lunetta Kelso and Adrian Fernandez is your fourth row. Yamanaka Danish on his debut in Ogden. Your fifth row ahead of Eddie O'Shea, Movie, Teo Patelli crashed in Q2. Carraro 19th from Morelli, Esteban, Rossi Nepa, Boazzi Detvila and Cormac Buchanan, who went down early on in Q1.